equates to the real level of existing current reverse cuts, which means 55% increase in all delegated and ODSP rates. Restore the special diet allowance. Restore the community startup program so that people have a chance to eat healthfully. Increase the minimum wage to $15 at least. 6, suspend this ODSP medical reviews until the government computer system is functioning and doesn't cut off people needlessly. 7, stop the elimination of $100 a month work-related benefit for people on ODSP. And number 8, there should be access to services for everybody, with or without status. Everyone needs shelter, and everyone needs food to survive. And we're not alone in this, and you wouldn't be alone with us if you were joining us, because there's many supporters. And a list of the supporters are the Center for Research in Social Justice and Policy at Laurentian University, Labor Studies at Laurentian University, Laurentian Graduate Students Association, Mama Westwin, North Shore Tribal Council, Sudbury Workers Educational Advocacy Centre, the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty, the Provincial Raise the Rates Campaign, Canadian Union of Postal Workers, OPSI Local 104, Sudbury District Cupid Council, Sudbury District Labour Council. So I think together we might be able to push something forward.
Thanks, Dale. Our first speaker tonight is Nicole Beaulieu. Born and raised in Sudbury, Ontario, Nicole is a humanist, feminist, and an advocate for workers' rights. Working in the labor movement and helping others is as much part of Nicole's work as it is ingrained in her personal values. Her current title as the Executive Director of the Sudbury Workers Education and Advocacy Centre allows her to help vulnerable workers and make a difference in our community. As a young and precarious worker herself, she's always excited to learn and have open discussions on different issues to find out how we can all work together towards positive change. In her spare time, she likes to play roller derby. A good friend of the labor movement and the Sudbury anti-poverty movement. Everyone, Nicole Beaulieu.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you so much for sticking around. I'm only going to take about 5 minutes of your time, but I really appreciate everyone being here. The Raise the Rates campaign is very important, as no one is making enough to live on these days. Whether you're on social assistance or not, whether you're working or not, it's a struggle to get by every day. I do come to this campaign and this gathering from a bit of a different perspective, so I thought I would first explain more about the work we do at the Workers' Centre. We help workers who face issues at work and aren't protected by a union, and we also educate folks on their rights at work. We want to make a difference in people's lives by fighting for better working conditions. Therefore, we're involved in a campaign called the Fight for 15 and Fairness campaign. Yeah, make it 20. This one only looks at bringing it up to $15 an hour, but we can definitely aim for higher. And also getting more fairness and better protections in our labor laws. So we believe that our campaign supports the Raise the Rates campaign because we're all fighting for the same thing. We all need sustainable finances that allow us to live a decent quality life. We all want to be treated fairly. We all want to stop the austerity agenda coming from our provincial government. And we all want a new system that does not thrive on keeping people oppressed and keeping people living in poverty. At the Centre, we're hoping that if we can bring up the minimum wage, that the campaigns for Raise the Rates and a guaranteed basic income and others will also grow higher, or vice versa. We all need to work together to put pressure on our capitalist system, and we all need to work together to make change. We need to work together to raise the floor without raising the ceiling. With the price of food and all of our costs going up already, we need to adjust our financial assistance and our wages in order to keep people out of poverty. There are many people who come to the center who are working and who are on social assistance. These workers face many challenges trying to stay afloat. They are usually coined as the working poor. These workers are not only struggling to make ends meet, but they seem to be trapped in low-paying jobs, and if they want to work more, their money is being clawed back by the government. They are also facing struggles around scheduling, unpaid wages, and even something as simple as attaining their pay stubs for their records. Something as small as a pay stub could have a huge impact on someone's life. We've had a client whose employer refused to give her her pay stubs, yet she needed them to prove to her landlord her gross income for housing purposes. If we weren't able to help her get those pay stubs back, she may not have been able to keep the roof over her head. All of that to say, every little thing in the system works together against us. Therefore, we as a collective also need to work together to fight back. I think we can all agree that workers need more stable and full-time work and need enough hours to live on. Part-time, temporary, and casual workers should also be paid the same as their full-time counterparts doing the same job. Workers also need their schedules posted at least 2 weeks in advance so that they are able to plan their lives and contribute to the growth of our community. We need more vacation and the introduction of paid sick days. This would help immensely for those who may need more time off than others. For instance, we had a client who has lupus, who worked part-time and was on ODSP. So some days she would be completely fine and able to work, while other days her lupus symptoms would flare and she couldn't work at all. So if she had access to paid sick days and more vacation days, it might be easier to manage while keeping her job. Working in precarious jobs is already hard on our mental and physical well-being. We should be striving to make things easier on us, not more difficult. Workers need better protection when we stand up for our rights at work. We need protection from unfair dismissals. It should be made easier for workers to join unions. And our workplaces need to be free from bullying, harassment, and any form of discrimination. At the center, we often see social stigmas and stereotypes translated into the way people are treated unfairly at work. We need fair rules that protect everyone. We need to get rid of exemptions that segregate us into different categories. Why is it up to the government to decide who gets benefits and who doesn't? Our farmers are not entitled to minimum wage. Our taxi drivers are not entitled to overtime pay. The list goes on and on. This should not be up to them. We are all entitled to human rights. We are all entitled to an income that will keep us out of poverty. And we are all entitled to being treated equally.
Yes.
So not only do we need stronger enforcement to make sure that employers can't take advantage of people and get away with breaking our laws, but we need to make our voices heard so that we can lead the change in our community. So I stand here today determined to create a place where everyone is welcomed and treated equally. I stand here today hopeful that we can get proper social assistance and living wages for all people. We can do this together if we keep the pressure on, and so I hope everyone here is involved in multiple campaigns that are all fighting against the austerity agenda and poverty in general, because you are making a difference. And if you have any questions at all about the Fight for 15 and Fairness campaign, feel free to come talk to me after. I just want to finish by mentioning that we are holding a rally for the Fight for 15 and Fairness. It's going to be on April 15th at noon on Barrydown Road in front of the MPP's office. So if you'd like to join us, there's more information on a flyer on the table in the corner. So as I mentioned, we need to work together and help each other reach equality. We need to work together to ensure that everyone, regardless of their job, disability, level of education, whatever the situation, is treated equally and are able to live a life of dignity and respect. Thank you so much.
Nicole is one of two and a half workers, two full-time, one-half worker at SWEAN Center Workers Educational and Advocacy Center, and she's doing a dynamite job. Now it's my pleasure to introduce John Clarke, the second speaker. John is a trauma-based political activist, founder and leading trailblazer of the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty. He grew up in London, England, and moved to Ontario in the 80s, where he took a job as a factory worker. When he became unemployed, he founded the Unemployed Workers Union, which led to the creation of the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty, OCAP, in 1989. So for more than 25 years, John has been in the trenches as a political organizer, and some would say a professional agitator. We are delighted to have him speak to us tonight and share his enormous wealth and experience.
Thanks very much. So everyone knows that social assistance rates, Ontario works. Social assistance rates on Ontario Works ODSP are grossly inadequate. And moreover, those rates have, in terms of what they can spend, in terms of what you can actually buy with the assistance you're given, they've fallen dramatically. And as I think was pointed out, since the 1990s, since 1994, social assistance rates have actually lost 55% of their spending power, which in 1994 they were no luxurious amount. People were already poor at that time. So people have been thrown into a situation where people simply cannot pay their rent and feed themselves. That's a scandal, because we live in a country of enormous wealth, and it needs to be challenged. It needs to be challenged strongly. But the question I think is posed is, why have governments worked to create a situation why people are so poor when they are on social assistance? It really doesn't come down to the fact that they need to save money. It comes down to the fact that there is a link, and the last speaker really brings this home. There is a link between inadequate social assistance rates and the ability of employers to pay low wages. That really is what the name of the game is. And the two have gone together. In the period where social assistance rates have been driven down, the numbers of workers working in low-wage jobs has exploded. Since the Liberals came to power in 2003, the percentage of workers working for minimum wage has doubled in the province of Ontario. And where at the beginning of the 2000s there were about 18% of workers who were low wage, now it's 30%. And it's not just a question of low wages, it's a question of workers having no rights, of workers being precarious, of workers working temporarily, not knowing if they're going to be able to keep their jobs. So there is a link, and that's why primarily they're doing it. That's why for them it is, you might say, a strategic objective to lower social assistance rates and create a climate of desperation. And these days, even disabled people are not protected from that process. They're looking to create a situation where they redefine disability, and where even disabled people are forced to compete for the lowest paying jobs on offer. So the real issue that we put before us then is to try to find a way to challenge that drive to reduce the adequacy of social assistance rates and to win gains. And that's what the Raise the Rates Coalition has been about trying to do. Before Raise the Rates really came together, the first fight that was taken up by people in Sudbury here, but certainly by OCAP, by our organisation in Toronto, was around something called the special diet. that many people here will probably be familiar with. It's a benefit that if a medical provider deems it necessary, enables somebody on social assistance to get extra income. And so we organised a whole campaign around that, where we organised what we call hunger clinics, and we brought together sympathetic doctors and nurses, and we signed people up for the special diet. We signed up thousands of people to get the special diet. And when they tried to deny, we organised mass delegations to welfare offices. We occupied the mayor's office in Toronto. We did a whole series of things, and it led to a situation where the Auditor General of the province said that the special diet had gone from a program paying $6 million a year to one that was paying $200 million a year. And that's a lot of money that was owed to poor people. It's only a very small part of what was owed to poor people, but we were able to win some of it back through that agitation. Similarly, when they announced that they were going to destroy the community startup and maintenance benefit, they decided that they were going to replace it with a patchwork of locally delivered programs across the province, and they were going to cut the funding in half. And there was a whole series of actions that were taken up, including the occupation of Rick Bartolucci's office here, where 11 people were arrested. Yeah. There were actions carried out all across the province, and in the last final days, the government announced that they were going to put $42 million back into the program. That was one, and I'll be the first to admit that we didn't save the community startup and maintenance benefit, but the funding that was put back was as a result of people taking up a fight in their communities. Because that's the message that we try to bring home, is that we are not here today to register some useless, futile, bleating protest against something we can't stop. We're here to organise in communities so we can fight back and win. That's what the real goal of this whole movement is about. So, and the strength of the movement will grow to the extent that we put down deeper roots in communities. We organise more and more people to fight back and to resist. And at the moment, the situation is especially grim, because for various reasons of economic downturn and what have you, the cost of importing food into this country has gone up dramatically. And people see that where every time they go to a grocery store. There is an explosion of food prices that is going on at the moment in Canada that is dramatic. In the last budget, they announced that they were going to increase social assistance rates in this province by 1.5%. And they seem to suggest that that was some sort of improvement. It won't even kick in until the autumn. But that 1.5% was something they seemed proud of. The official rate of inflation is 2%. So even by that yardstick, it's a cut in the real income that people have. But if you look at what's happening to rents, it's way beyond 2%. If you look at what's happening to food prices, overall food prices in the last year have gone up by 4%. But basic staple items have gone up even more than that. The cost of food prices last year in Canada went up by 18.2%. And they're giving people a 1.5% increase on an income that already doesn't enable them to eat properly and pay their rent and stay housed. And that isn't about cutting people down a bit. That's about abandoning people. That's about destroying their health. That's about making them homeless. That's about shortening their lives. That's about inflicting misery and poverty on people. And the Premier of the province has referred to herself as the social justice Premier. Nothing could be a bigger lie than that. There isn't a morsel of social justice in a government that would abandon people as viciously and cruelly as this government is doing. And so we in OCAP are proposing that in addition to the demands that we put forward, we come up with a special emergency demand around increases in social assistance kicking in immediately that actually reflect the real increase in the cost of living. So that as they recently indexed the minimum wage, which was a step forward that people fought very hard for, but to index something to an official rate of inflation when poor people have to spend so much of their income on food and rent is not realistic. It has to be indexed to a real, meaningful figure. And so I think the struggle that we're taking up in our communities is moving to a new and a more important and a very, very decisive point. Because if they're prepared to hand people that kind of a pittance of an increase in a situation where food prices are going through the roof, then they are willfully creating a crisis of hunger in the communities of Ontario. And that is, to say it's unacceptable is an understatement. It's an outrage. It's a bloody outrage. It's got to be challenged and it's got to be fought. The final thing that I just want to briefly mention is that at the moment, the Wynne government has been talking, and Trudeau has been talking about it as well, about the idea of introducing something they call basic income. And they're going to do some kind of pilot project. And the idea is that everybody gets a certain amount of money. I want to make clear that we would be making a very, very big mistake if we thought that everything was safe and in the hands of the government and they're working on a just and humane system of providing income to people so all our worries are over. This government has been exceptionally good at allowing people to get poorer but creating the illusion that they are working on the problem. They've held these unending poverty reduction consultations all across the province. They even passed into law a measure called the Poverty Reduction Act. And under the Poverty Reduction Act, it's supposed to be the law that any government that is in power is supposed to bring in yearly reports on what they're doing to reduce poverty. If that law had the same penalties attached to it that the laws poor people deal with, then they would have to have their government cabinet meetings in a prison, because they would be in jail for breaking their own law, the poverty reduction law. Poverty is not being reduced, poverty is being increased. So the Raise the Rates campaign, the anti-poverty movement in Sudbury, people in communities across the province have demonstrated that it is possible to fight back and it is possible to win. But we're facing a greater challenge than we've ever faced before. So we've got to unite, we've got to organise, we've got to build right here in Sudbury a movement that is not simply about registering a protest or winning some small concessions, but can really challenge the whole austerity, poverty agenda of this government. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John.